Jake Morrison wiped his dirty hands on an old rag. The clock on the wall showed 6 in the evening. Another long day at the auto shop was finally over. He looked around at the tools scattered on his workbench and the half-fixed truck in the corner. Tomorrow he would finish that job and maybe have enough money to pay this month's rent. The small town of Cedar Falls, Montana had been quiet for weeks. Ever since the news started talking about strange signals from space, people seemed worried. Jake did not think much about it. He had cars to fix and bills to pay. Space stuff was for smart people in big cities, not for a simple mechanic like him. Jake locked up his shop and walked to his old pickup truck. The evening air was cool and fresh. Mountains stood tall in the distance, their tops covered with snow even in summer. This was home, simple and peaceful. As he opened his truck door, a bright light filled the sky. Jake looked up and saw something that made his mouth fall open. Ships were coming down from the clouds. Not airplanes or helicopters. These were different. They moved too smooth and too quiet. Their shapes were strange, like nothing he had ever seen. Other people came out of their houses and stores. Everyone stood in the streets, pointing at the sky. Some people screamed. Others just stared. Jake felt his heart beating fast, but he could not look away. The ships landed in the big field outside town. They were huge and made of some kind of silver metal that seemed to glow. Doors opened in the sides of the ships and beings walked out. They looked almost human, but taller and thinner. Their skin was pale blue and their eyes were larger than normal. They wore long robes that moved like water. One of the beings held up a device and spoke. The words came out in their language first, then a machine voice spoke in English. "People of Earth, do not be afraid. We come in peace. We are the Veltar. We wish to be friends." The next few days changed everything. The aliens, who called themselves Veltar, set up meetings with world leaders. They said they wanted to trade knowledge and learn about human culture. The news showed pictures of their queen, a beautiful being named Zarathus. She had long silver hair and wore a crown made of crystal. Jake watched the news like everyone else, but he still had to work. Cars did not fix themselves, and people still needed to get to their jobs. Life went on, even with aliens on Earth. 2 weeks later, Jake heard that Queen Zarathus was coming to Washington, D.C. for a big ceremony. The president would meet her, and they would sign papers to make Earth and the Veltar Empire friends. Jake thought it was interesting, but far away from his small world. Then his girlfriend Lisa called him. She was a scientist who studied animals and plants. The government had asked her to come to Washington to help with the alien meeting. "Jake, you should come with me," Lisa said on the phone. "This is history happening. We might never see anything like this again." Jake did not want to go. Big cities made him nervous, and he had work to do. But Lisa kept asking, and finally he said yes. They drove to Washington together in his old truck. The ceremony was held in a big park near the White House. Thousands of people came to watch. Jake and Lisa found a spot in the crowd, far from the stage where all the important people sat. Queen Zarathus was even more beautiful in person. When she spoke, her voice was soft and musical. She talked about peace between their worlds and learning from each other. Jake found himself listening carefully to every word. During a break in the speeches, Jake noticed an old man in a wheelchair nearby. The man was trying to move closer to see better, but one of his wheels was stuck. Jake walked over and looked at the wheel. A small piece of metal was jammed in it. "Let me help you, sir," Jake said. He pulled out a small tool from his pocket and worked the metal piece loose. The wheel turned smoothly again. "Thank you, young man," the old veteran said. "That chair has been giving me trouble all day." Jake smiled and went back to Lisa's side. He did not see Queen Zarathus watching from the stage. She had noticed the small act of kindness. Her large eyes followed Jake as he moved through the crowd. After the main ceremony ended, something unexpected happened. Queen Zarathus left the stage and walked into the crowd. Her guards followed her, looking worried. She moved directly toward Jake. People moved out of her way as she approached. Jake felt his face turn red when he realized she was coming toward him. Lisa grabbed his arm, looking surprised and a little scared. The alien queen stopped in front of Jake. Up close, her skin seemed to shimmer like water. Her eyes were kind but very intelligent. She spoke in her own language first, then in English. "You helped the elderly human," she said. "You saw someone in need and acted without thinking of reward. This shows the best of your species." Jake did not know what to say. "It was nothing, Your Majesty. Anyone would have done the same thing. Queen Zarathus smiled. Not anyone. But you did. I wish to give you something. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small metal cube. It was about the size of Jake's fist, made of dark metal with strange symbols carved into its sides. This is a token of friendship between our peoples, she said, placing the cube in Jake's hands. May it remind you that small acts of kindness can change the world. The cube felt warm in Jake's hands. It was heavier than it looked and seemed to hum very quietly. Jake stared at it, not believing this was really happening. Thank you, he managed to say. I don't know what to say. Say that you will remember this day, the Queen replied. And remember that even the smallest person can make the biggest difference. The crowd around them erupted in noise. Cameras flashed from every direction. Reporters pushed forward, shouting questions. Jake felt overwhelmed by all the attention. Queen Zarathus nodded to Jake once more, then turned and walked back to her guards. They escorted her away, leaving Jake standing in the middle of the crowd with the strange cube in his hands. Lisa looked at him with wide eyes. Jake, do you know what just happened? The alien queen just gave you a personal gift. This is going to be on every news channel in the world. Jake looked down at the cube. The symbols on its surface seemed to shift and move when he was not looking directly at them. But when he focused on them, they stayed still. It was probably just the sunlight playing tricks on his eyes. I just want to go home, Jake said quietly. The trip back to Montana was long and strange. Jake's phone rang constantly with calls from reporters and government people. He stopped answering after the first few calls. He just wanted to get back to his simple life and his auto shop. But as they drove through the mountains toward Cedar Falls, Jake could not stop looking at the cube sitting on the dashboard. What was it really? Why had the alien queen chosen him? And why did it feel like his life was about to change forever? 3 weeks passed since Jake returned home with the alien cube. Life in Cedar Falls had gone back to normal, except for the reporters who sometimes showed up asking questions. Jake always told them he had nothing interesting to say and sent them away. The cube sat on his workbench in the auto shop. It looked like a paperweight now, just a chunk of metal with weird symbols. Jake had shown it to a few people, but nobody could figure out what the symbols meant. It did not glow or make sounds or do anything special. Sometimes Jake wondered if he had imagined the whole thing. Dr. Helen Brooks from the government had called him several times. She worked for something called the First Contact Division and wanted to study the cube. Jake told her she could come look at it, but he was not giving it away. The alien queen had given it to him personally, and he planned to keep it. Dr. Brooks came to Cedar Falls with a team of scientists. They brought fancy machines and spent 2 days testing the cube. They scanned it, took pictures of it, and tried to open it. Nothing worked. Their tests showed it was made of normal metals that humans knew about. The symbols were just decorations carved into the surface. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, Dr. Brooks said as they packed up their equipment. We can't find anything unusual about your cube. It appears to be a simple gift, exactly what the Queen said it was. After the scientists left, Jake felt a little disappointed. Part of him had hoped the cube was something special, something that proved his meeting with the Queen was important, but maybe it really was just a decoration. Jake went back to his normal routine. He fixed cars during the day and spent evenings with Lisa or his best friend Tony Martinez. Tony owned the bar next to Jake's shop and always had funny stories about the customers. You're famous now, Tony said one evening as they drank beer and watched the news. Jake Morrison, the guy who got a present from the alien queen. Women from 3 towns over are asking about you. I'm not famous, Jake replied. I'm just the lucky guy who happened to be standing in the right place. Lisa came over most nights after her work at the Animal Research Lab. She was excited about the new knowledge humans were learning from the Veltar. The aliens had shared information about medicine and farming that could help millions of people. They're so advanced, Lisa said one night as they sat on Jake's porch. Their ships can travel between stars in weeks instead of years. They know how to cure diseases we've never even heard of. It's amazing what we can learn from them. Jake nodded, but he was not really listening. His attention was on the cube sitting inside on his workbench. Sometimes he thought he saw it move out of the corner of his eye, but when he looked directly at it, nothing was there. The storm came on a Thursday night in July. Jake was working late in his shop, trying to finish a transmission repair before morning. The customer needed his truck for work the next day, and Jake hated to disappoint people. Rain pounded on the roof of the shop. Lightning flashed outside the windows and thunder shook the building. Jake had seen plenty of mountain storms, but this one seemed stronger than usual. He was lying under the truck, working with a wrench, when the first lightning bolt hit the power line outside. The lights in the shop flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but it only powered a few small lights. Jake rolled out from under the truck and looked around. His electric tools had shut off. The radio in the corner was making static sounds. He walked to the window and saw that most of the town was dark. The storm had knocked out power to the whole area. Another lightning bolt struck somewhere close. This time, Jake heard a strange humming sound coming from his workbench. He turned around and saw something that made him freeze. The cube was glowing. A soft blue light came from inside the metal, making the carved symbols look like they were floating. As Jake watched, the light got brighter. Lines of energy appeared in the air above the cube, forming shapes and patterns he did not understand. Jake walked slowly toward the workbench. His heart was beating fast, but he was not scared. The light from the cube felt warm and friendly, not dangerous. When he got close enough, he reached out and touched it. The moment his fingers made contact with the cube, Jake's world exploded. Information flooded into his mind. Not words or pictures, but pure knowledge. He suddenly understood things he had never learned. Math problems that would have taken him hours to solve became as easy as adding 2 plus 2. Engineering concepts that confused him in school now made perfect sense. Jake stumbled backward, holding his head. The flood of information was too much. He felt like his brain was going to burst. But slowly, the feeling faded, and the knowledge settled into place like it had always been there. He looked at the transmission he had been working on. Before, it had been a puzzle he was solving piece by piece. Now he could see exactly what was wrong and 3 different ways to fix it. More than that, he could see how to make it work better than it ever had before. The cube's glow faded back to normal, but Jake could still feel it humming in his mind. Like a computer connected to his thoughts. When he focused on a problem, information would appear in his head. Not human knowledge, but something else, something alien. Jake spent the rest of the night experimenting. He fixed the transmission in 30 minutes using techniques he had never seen before. Then he started working on other projects. An old engine that had been giving him trouble for months suddenly made sense. He could see the problem and the solution clearly. By morning, Jake had repaired 6 vehicles that had been sitting in his shop for weeks. He had also drawn plans for improvements to each one that would make them run smoother and last longer. The ideas just flowed out of his mind onto paper. When Tony came by the next morning to check on storm damage, he found Jake sitting at his workbench surrounded by tools and papers covered with drawings. "Did you work all night?" Tony asked. "You look terrible." Jake looked up. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they were also bright with excitement. "Tony, something incredible happened. The cube, it's not just a decoration. It's some kind of machine." Tony looked at the cube sitting quietly on the workbench. It looked the same as always. "What kind of machine?" "I don't know exactly, but it can teach me things. It put knowledge in my head about engines and machines and—" Jake stopped. He realized how crazy he sounded. Tony sat down and studied his friend's face. "Jake, when's the last time you slept? Maybe you should take a break and get some rest." Jake wanted to explain, but he knew Tony would not believe him. Instead, he walked over to Mrs. Peterson's old car, which had been running rough for months. He popped the hood and made 3 quick adjustments. Then he started the engine. The car purred like it was brand new. Tony's mouth fell open. "How did you do that?" "You've been working on that car for weeks." "The cube taught me," Jake said simply. Over the next few days, Jake discovered more about what the cube could do. It did not just give him knowledge about engines and machines. It could help him understand any technical problem. When Lisa brought him a broken microscope from her lab, Jake fixed it in minutes and made it work better than before. But the cube came with a price. The more Jake used it, the more his head hurt. Sometimes the alien knowledge felt too big for his human brain. He started having dreams about places he had never seen and people who looked like the Veltar Queen. Lisa noticed the changes in him. "You're different," she said one evening. "Smarter, but also distant. Like part of you is somewhere else." Jake knew she was right. The cube was changing him. Each time he used it, he felt a little less human and a little more like something else. But the knowledge was so amazing and he could help so many people with it. He had to decide how far he was willing to let it change him. Word began to spread about Jake's sudden improvement as a mechanic. People came from towns far away to have him fix their vehicles. He could solve problems that other mechanics said were impossible. Dr. Brooks called again. She had heard about Jake's new abilities and wanted to come back with her team. This time Jake agreed to see her. He had questions that needed answers, and maybe the government scientists could help him understand what was happening to him. But as Jake waited for Dr. Brooks to arrive, he could not shake the feeling that his simple life was over forever. The cube had given him incredible gifts, but it had also put him on a path he could not turn back from. He looked at the cube sitting on his workbench, humming quietly with alien power. Whatever it really was, it had chosen him for something important. Jake just hoped he was strong enough to handle what came next. Dr. Brooks returned to Cedar Falls with a bigger team this time. She brought engineers, computer experts, and even a few Veltar scientists who had stayed on Earth to help with the friendship program. When they tested the cube again, everything had changed. "This is impossible," Dr. Brooks said, staring at her instruments. 3 weeks ago, this was just carved metal. Now it's giving off energy readings we've never seen before. "Mr. Morrison, what happened?" Jake told them about the storm and how the cube had awakened. He demonstrated how it worked by solving a complex engineering problem that the team had brought with them. In 10 minutes, Jake designed a solution that their best scientists had been working on for months. The Veltar scientists were excited, but also worried. They spoke to each other in their musical language, then turned to Jake with serious expressions. "The device was not supposed to activate so quickly," one of them said through a translator. "It usually takes years of preparation for a human mind to safely interface with our technology." "Interface?" Jake asked. "What do you mean?" "The cube contains a fragment of Queen Zarathus's consciousness," the alien explained. "It was meant to slowly teach you our ways over many years, but something has accelerated the process." Dr. Brooks arranged for Jake to come to a government research facility in Colorado. There, he could work with the best human and Veltar scientists to understand what was happening to him. Jake agreed, but only if Lisa could come too. The research facility was built into a mountain and hidden from public view. Jake found himself in a world of advanced laboratories and brilliant minds from 2 different species. For the first time since getting the cube, he felt like he belonged somewhere. Working with the mixed team of scientists, Jake helped solve problems that had puzzled researchers for decades. He designed new types of solar panels that could power entire cities. He created medical scanners that could find diseases before symptoms appeared. He developed communication systems that could send messages across the galaxy in minutes instead of years. Each breakthrough made headlines around the world. Jake Morrison, the small-town mechanic, was becoming famous as the bridge between human and alien science. But Jake barely noticed the fame. He was too focused on the work and the incredible feeling of understanding how the universe worked. Lisa worked in the biology section of the facility, learning from Veltar experts about life on other worlds. But she was worried about Jake. He spent 18 hours a day in the laboratories, driven by an obsession to solve bigger and bigger problems. When he came home to their small apartment in the facility, he was exhausted and distant. "You're losing yourself," Lisa told him one night. "The Jake I fell in love with cared about people, not just problems. Now you talk like one of those computers." Jake wanted to tell her she was wrong, but deep down he knew she was right. The alien knowledge was taking over more of his mind every day. Sometimes he forgot he was human. Sometimes he dreamed he was flying between stars with Queen Zarathus. Tony visited from Montana and was shocked by what he saw. "You look terrible, buddy," he said. "When's the last time you ate a real meal or watched a football game or did anything normal?" Jake tried to explain how important the work was, how it could help all of humanity, but Tony just shook his head. "You're saving the world, but you're losing your soul," Tony said. While Jake worked on breakthrough after breakthrough, something dark was happening behind the scenes. High Counselor Drakvin, the Veltar leader who had opposed the Queen's peaceful approach to Earth, was secretly working to destroy the friendship between the 2 species. Drakvin had agents hidden among the Veltar scientists on Earth. These agents began sabotaging some of Jake's inventions, making them fail in dangerous ways. When a new power generator exploded during testing, injuring several researchers, people began to question whether human-alien cooperation was safe. "Maybe we're moving too fast," Dr. Brooks said after the accident. Maybe humans aren't ready for this level of technology. Jake felt frustrated and angry. He knew his designs were safe. The explosion had to be caused by something else. Using the cube's abilities, he began investigating what had gone wrong. The cube showed him security camera footage that others had missed. In the recordings, Jake saw a Veltar scientist making small changes to his power generator design just before the test, changes that would cause exactly the kind of explosion that had happened. Jake brought this evidence to Dr. Brooks and the facility's security team. But when they questioned the suspect, the alien scientist claimed that Jake was mistaken. He said the cube was making Jake paranoid and unable to think clearly. The device is affecting his judgment, the saboteur told the human investigators. Extended contact with our technology can cause mental instability in humans. Perhaps Mr. Morrison should be separated from the cube for his own safety. Some of the human scientists began to agree. They had noticed Jake's personality changes and worried that the alien technology was harming him. Dr. Brooks found herself caught between wanting to protect Jake and needing to keep the research program safe. Jake realized he was in an impossible situation. The more he tried to prove the sabotage, the more people thought he was losing his mind. The alien agents used his every action as evidence that humans could not handle Veltar technology safely. Commander Rick Stone arrived at the facility with a team of military investigators. He had been assigned to look into the security problems and determine whether the research program should continue. Mr. Morrison, Commander Stone said during their first meeting, we need to talk about your relationship with that cube. Some people think it's making you unstable. Jake tried to explain about the sabotage, but he could see that Stone was already suspicious of him. The cube's influence on his mind made it hard for him to connect with people emotionally. He sounded cold and logical when he needed to sound human and trustworthy. That night, Jake had the most vivid dream yet. He was standing in a great crystal palace facing Queen Zarathes herself. But this was not just a dream. Through the cube's connection, he was actually communicating with the Queen across the stars. My young friend, the Queen said, I sense you are in great danger. There are those among my people who would use your situation to justify violence against your world. What can I do? Jake asked. No one believes me about the sabotage. They think the cube is making me crazy. The cube contains part of my consciousness, but you are still human, the Queen replied. Trust in your human heart, not just alien knowledge. The solution to this problem will not come from superior technology, but from the same kindness that made me choose you. When Jake woke up, he knew what he had to do, but it would require giving up everything he had gained and trusting in the very human qualities that the cube's knowledge made him want to ignore. The next morning brought terrible news. 3 more of Jake's inventions had failed during testing at other facilities around the world. No one was seriously hurt, but the pattern was clear. Someone was systematically sabotaging human-alien cooperation, and Jake was being blamed for all of it. Commander Stone came to Jake's laboratory with a security team. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, but I'm placing you in protective custody. There are too many questions about your mental state and the safety of your work. As they led Jake away from his laboratory, he clutched the cube in his hands. He could feel Queen Zarathes's consciousness within it, trying to guide him toward a solution. But for the first time since the cube had awakened, Jake chose to ignore the alien knowledge and trust his human instincts instead. He had to find a way to expose the truth about Drakvin's sabotage, but more importantly, he had to prove that humans and Veltar could work together without losing what made each species special. The fate of 2 worlds might depend on whether a small-town mechanic could remember how to be human while carrying the wisdom of an alien queen in his mind. Jake sat in a small room with no windows and only one door. Commander Stone called it protective custody, but it felt like prison. The walls were white and empty except for a camera in the corner that watched his every move. They had let him keep the cube, but guards stood outside his door at all times. Dr. Brooks visited him every day, asking the same questions over and over. Was he feeling confused? Was he hearing voices? Did he think people were plotting against him? Jake tried to explain about the sabotage, but she wrote everything down like symptoms of mental illness. Jake, I want to help you, Dr. Brooks said during one visit. But you have to admit that the cube is affecting your mind. The personality changes, the paranoid thoughts about other scientists, the way you've lost touch with your emotions. These are all signs that the alien technology is too much for a human brain to handle. Jake wanted to argue, but he knew she was partly right. The cube had changed him. Sometimes he felt more like a computer than a person, but that did not mean he was wrong about the sabotage. Lisa came to see him whenever the guards allowed it. Each visit was harder than the last. She looked tired and worried, and Jake could see the pain in her eyes every time she looked at him. "I miss you," she said during one visit. I miss the Jake who would stop working to watch a sunset or laugh at Tony's stupid jokes. "This person sitting here looks like you but feels like a stranger." "I'm still me," Jake said, but even as he spoke the words, he wondered if they were true. "Are you?" Lisa asked. "When's the last time you asked me about my day or told me you loved me without me saying it first? When's the last time you cared about anything that wasn't a scientific problem to solve?" Jake tried to remember, but the memories felt distant and unimportant compared to the vast knowledge flowing through his mind from the cube. That realization scared him more than being locked up. Tony managed to get permission to visit after driving all the way from Montana. He brought news from home that made Jake's situation even worse. "People are scared, Jake," Tony said. "The news is saying that humans can't handle alien technology safely. They're showing pictures of the accidents and saying it's all your fault. Some folks back home think you've been taken over by aliens." Jake felt a crushing weight of responsibility. His actions were not just affecting him anymore. They were changing how the whole world saw the friendship between humans and Veltar. "There's something else," Tony said quietly. "Lisa didn't want to tell you because she was afraid it would make things worse. But Veltar ships have been showing up around Earth more every day. The government thinks they might be planning something." That night, Jake lay on his narrow bed staring at the cube. In the darkness, he could see its faint glow and feel the vast intelligence contained within it. Queen Zarathus's consciousness was trying to communicate with him, but Jake was afraid to open his mind fully. Each time he did, he lost a little more of his humanity. Finally, he decided he had to risk it. The fate of both species might depend on understanding what was really happening. Jake touched the cube and let his consciousness merge with the alien intelligence inside. Immediately, he was transported across space to Queen Zarathus's ship, which was hidden behind Earth's moon. "My young friend," the Queen said, "I'm glad you have contacted me. The situation has become very dangerous, and what's happening?" Jake asked. "Why are Veltar ships gathering around Earth?" The Queen's face was sad but determined. "High Counselor Drakvin has convinced many of my people that humans are dangerous. He points to the failed experiments and says that your species will use our technology to build weapons. He demands that I order all Veltar to leave Earth and never return. Can't you stop him?" "I could, but it would mean civil war among my people. Drakvin has many followers who believe that peace with humans is impossible. They want me to prove that humans can be trusted, or they will force me to abandon your world forever." Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. "What kind of proof?" "That is what I do not know," the Queen admitted. "Drakvin has set a trap. Any test I propose, he will find a way to make humans fail. He has agents working to sabotage cooperation between our species." "I know about the agents," Jake said. "I have evidence, but no one believes me." "That is part of his plan. By making you seem unstable, he discredits the entire friendship program. Soon, even those humans who support cooperation will begin to doubt." Jake's heart sank. "So we've already lost?" "Not yet," Queen Zarathus said. "But time is running short. Drakvin plans something that will force my hand within days. I do not know what, but I fear it will be terrible for both our peoples." When Jake returned to normal consciousness, he found Dr. Brooks and Commander Stone standing in his room. They had been watching him during his contact with the cube, and the sight of him appearing to talk to empty air had convinced them that he was completely unstable. "That's it," Commander Stone said. "We're separating him from the cube immediately. He's clearly having hallucinations." "No," Jake said, clutching the cube tightly. "You don't understand. Queen Zarathus is trying to warn us. High Counselor Drakvin is planning something terrible." Dr. Brooks made notes on her clipboard. "Jake, Queen Zarathus is millions of miles away. You can't talk to her through that cube. These are delusions caused by alien technology interfering with your brain." Jake tried to explain, but he could see it was hopeless. In their eyes, he was just a mentally ill man talking to an imaginary alien queen. The very abilities that the cube gave him were being used as proof that he was crazy. That night, Jake made a desperate decision. He had to escape and find a way to prove the truth about Drakvin's sabotage. But to do that, he would have to give up the cube's power and trust in his own human abilities. Dr. Brooks had been studying Jake for weeks, and she genuinely cared about helping him. When Jake asked to speak with her privately, she agreed to listen. "Dr. Brooks," Jake said, "I know you think I'm sick. Maybe I am. But before you take the cube away forever, let me prove one thing to you. Give me access to the security footage from all the sabotaged experiments. Let me show you the evidence without using the cube's abilities. Just my own human observation skills." Dr. Brooks hesitated. "Jake, we've already reviewed all the footage. There's nothing there." "Please," Jake said. "If I can't prove sabotage using only normal human abilities, then I'll give up the cube willingly. I'll admit that it's made me paranoid and accept whatever treatment you think is best." After discussing it with Commander Stone, Dr. Brooks agreed to give Jake one chance. They brought him to a secure computer room and showed him hours of security footage from the failed experiments. Jake forced himself to ignore the cube's influence and study the videos with only his own eyes and brain. It took him 6 hours, but finally Jake found what he was looking for. In one video, he spotted a Veltar scientist making subtle changes to a device just before testing. In another, he caught the same alien placing a small object near an experiment that later failed. "There," Jake said, pointing at the screen. "That's your saboteur. And I found this using only human observation skills. No alien technology." Dr. Brooks studied the footage carefully. The evidence was subtle but real. "Even if you're right about this one scientist, that doesn't prove a larger conspiracy." "Then test it," Jake said. "Arrest this alien and see if the sabotage stops. But do it quickly. Queen Zarathes warned me that Drakvin is planning something big very soon." Commander Stone was skeptical, but he agreed to quietly detain the suspect for questioning. Within hours, they had their proof. Under pressure, the alien scientist admitted to being one of Drakvin's agents. He revealed that there were others and that something called the final demonstration was planned for the next day. Jake felt a moment of triumph, but it faded quickly when he learned what Drakvin was planning. The High Counselor intended to attack human cities with Veltar weapons, then claim that humans had stolen the technology and used it against themselves. This would prove that humans were too dangerous to have advanced technology and justify ending all cooperation between the species. "We have to warn everyone," Jake said. "Evacuate the cities, prepare defenses, something." "With what proof?" Commander Stone asked. "One alien agent's confession? Drakvin will just deny everything and claim we're making it up." Jake realized that stopping Drakvin would require more than evidence or military action. It would require showing both species that cooperation was still possible, even after all the mistrust that had been built up. And to do that, Jake would have to find a way to be both human and alien, normal and extraordinary, all at the same time. Jake knew he had less than 24 hours before Drakvin's attack would destroy any chance of peace between humans and Veltar. Sitting in his prison room, holding the cube in his hands, he made a choice that surprised everyone, including himself. He asked Commander Stone to release him and let him go home to Montana. "Are you crazy?" Stone asked. "We just proved there's a conspiracy against Earth. This is the most dangerous moment in human history, and you want to go fix cars in your garage?" "That's exactly what I want to do," Jake said. "And I want Lisa and Tony there with me. If we're going to save both our species, we need to remember what makes us human in the first place." Dr. Brooks thought Jake had finally lost his mind completely, but something in his voice made her believe he had a plan. Against all military protocol, she convinced Commander Stone to let Jake return to Cedar Falls with a small security team. The flight back to Montana gave Jake time to think. Through the cube's connection, he could sense Queen Zarathes's growing desperation. The Veltar fleet around Earth was splitting into two groups, those loyal to the Queen and those following Drakvin. War between the two factions seemed inevitable. When they landed in Cedar Falls, Jake felt something he had not experienced in months: peace. The mountains stood unchanged, covered in snow that sparkled in the afternoon sun. His auto shop looked exactly the same as when he had left it. For the first time since the cube had awakened, Jake remembered who he used to be. Lisa and Tony were waiting for him. Lisa ran to hug him, and for a moment Jake felt purely human again. No alien knowledge, no cosmic responsibility. Just a man who loved a woman and was grateful to have his best friend nearby. "I've missed you," Jake whispered to Lisa. "Not the alien-enhanced version of me. The real me has missed you." Tony clapped him on the shoulder. "Welcome home, buddy. Now what's this crazy plan that's supposed to save the world?" Jake looked at his two closest friends and the familiar surroundings of his shop. We're going to show everyone what really matters. Not superior technology or advanced knowledge, but the simple human ability to help each other. That evening, Jake did something that shocked the watching world. Using communication equipment provided by the government, he broadcast a message to every Veltar ship in the system. But instead of speaking to Queen Zarathus or trying to negotiate with Drakvan, he spoke directly to ordinary Veltar citizens. "My name is Jake Morrison," he said, looking straight into the camera. "I'm a mechanic from a small town on Earth. Your queen gave me a gift that changed my life, but it also nearly made me forget who I am. Today I want to show you something more important than any technology." Jake walked to his workbench and picked up the alien cube. This device contains incredible knowledge. It can solve problems and create wonders. But watching me use it, my friends were afraid they were losing me. They were right. The more I relied on alien wisdom, the less human I became. He set the cube down and picked up a simple wrench. This is a human tool. Basic, crude compared to your technology. But with tools like this, humans have built a civilization based on one simple idea: that we're stronger when we help each other than when we compete. Jake opened the bay door of his shop and walked outside. Lisa and Tony followed him, along with dozens of townspeople who had gathered to watch the broadcast. News crews from around the world were filming everything. High Counselor Drakvan thinks humans are dangerous because we might misuse Veltar technology, Jake continued. He's planning to attack human cities tonight to prove his point. But I want to show him something else. Jake nodded to Tony, who brought out Mrs. Peterson's old car, the same one Jake had fixed using the cube's knowledge weeks earlier. But now Jake deliberately removed the alien-enhanced parts he had installed. "Your technology made this car perfect," Jake said. "But perfection isn't human. Humans are flawed. We make mistakes. We argue and fight and sometimes do stupid things. But we also forgive each other and try to do better." As the world watched, Jake spent the next hour demonstrating the most basic human values. He helped Mrs. Peterson fix her car using only human tools and knowledge. When the job was harder than expected, Tony and several other townspeople joined in to help. They made mistakes, had to start over twice, and argued about the best way to do things, but they got the job done. "This is what humans do," Jake said to the cameras and to the Veltar fleet watching from space. "We help each other, not because we're ordered to, not because it's efficient, but because it's right." More people began arriving in Cedar Falls throughout the night, not just reporters and government officials, but ordinary people who had heard about Jake's broadcast. Families drove from neighboring towns. Veterans, teachers, farmers, and factory workers came to show their support. Dr. Brooks arrived with a team of Veltar scientists who had remained loyal to Queen Zarathus. Through them, Jake learned that his broadcast was causing arguments among Drakvan's followers. Some of the High Counselor's supporters were beginning to question whether humans were really as dangerous as he claimed, but Drakvan himself was not convinced. His ships moved into position above major Earth cities, preparing to carry out the false flag attack that would justify ending human-Veltar cooperation forever. Jake made one final broadcast as dawn broke over the mountains. This time he spoke directly to High Counselor Drakvan. "I know you can hear me," Jake said. "I know you think humans can't be trusted with advanced technology. Maybe you're right. Maybe we're not ready for some of the things your people can teach us. But that doesn't mean we can't learn." Jake held up the alien cube. "Queen Zarathus gave me this as a gift. It contains more knowledge than any human has ever possessed. I could use it to build weapons that would amaze you. I could solve problems that would benefit both our species. But instead, I'm going to do something that no amount of technology can accomplish." To the shock of everyone watching, Jake set the cube on his workbench and picked up a hammer. "I'm going to trust you," he said, raising the hammer above the cube. "I'm betting that even someone who thinks humans are dangerous will recognize an act of good faith when he sees one." Jake brought the hammer down. The cube shattered into a dozen pieces. The incredible knowledge that had filled Jake's mind for months vanished instantly. He was just a mechanic again, standing in his garage with a broken alien artifact at his feet. Lisa gasped. Tony stared in shock. The watching world held its breath. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then slowly, the Veltar ships above Earth's cities began to withdraw. High Counselor Drakvan had called off his attack. A new voice came over the communication system. It was Queen Zarathus herself, speaking from her flagship. "Jake Morrison of Earth," the Queen said, "you have done something remarkable. You chose to destroy great power rather than risk misusing it. This is wisdom that even my people rarely show." "I didn't destroy it," Jake replied. "I just proved that humans don't need it to be good neighbors." The aftermath of Jake's sacrifice changed everything. High Counselor Drakvin was removed from power by his own followers, who were impressed by the human gesture of destroying such valuable technology in the name of peace. Queen Zarathes negotiated a new agreement between the species, one based on gradual cooperation, rather than rapid technology transfer. Jake returned to his simple life, but it was different now. His auto shop became a symbol of human Veltar friendship. Aliens and humans worked together there, not on advanced technology, but on basic problems that required cooperation and trust. Lisa joined him permanently, setting up a small research lab next to the garage where she studied Veltar biology, at a pace both species could handle. Tony expanded his bar to serve both human and alien customers, becoming famous for his ability to make anyone feel welcome. Dr. Brooks established a permanent research station in Cedar Falls, focusing on cultural exchange rather than technology transfer. Commander Stone became the head of a new Earth Defense Force unit, dedicated to protecting the friendship between the species rather than preparing for war. The broken pieces of the alien cube sat in a place of honor on Jake's workbench. Occasionally, Jake thought he could still feel a faint connection to the vast knowledge it had contained. But he never tried to repair it. Some gifts, he had learned, were more valuable when given up than when kept. On quiet evenings, Jake would sit on his porch with Lisa, watching the stars. Sometimes they could see the lights of Veltar ships passing overhead, carrying messages and small gifts between Earth and the alien homeworld. "Do you ever regret destroying the cube?" Lisa asked one night. Jake thought about it seriously. "Sometimes I miss the feeling of understanding everything, but I don't miss losing myself in that understanding. The cube taught me alien knowledge, but you and Tony taught me how to stay human." "And that's enough?" Jake smiled and took her hand. "More than enough." The Queen was right. Small acts of kindness really can change the world. You just have to be brave enough to stay small while everything around you tries to make you bigger. Above them, the stars twinkled with the light of distant civilizations. Some of them might be friends someday, others might be threats. But Jake Morrison, the mechanic who had saved 2 worlds by choosing to remain human, was no longer worried about the future. He had learned the most important lesson in